What you're looking at is an MPC3000. It sits in a room amongst the most iconic relics of our country's musical history. And that room is on the 4th floor of the National Museum of African American History in our nation's capital. That MPC was owned by J Dilla, who composed some of the most revered beats in hip-hop history.
Technology has just taken a giant leap forward. Hello, I'm Roger Lynn, and this is the MPC60 Midi Production Center, created by myself and Akai Profession.
The MPC is this compact machine that's a holding station for all types of samples, which you can play with 16 touch-sensitive pads. The very first model shipped in 1988 for just a few $1,000s, and it was Akai and Roger Lynn's elaboration on the Lynn drum machine. The concept, though, of taking samples of pre-recorded sound and composing with them existed long before the late 1980s, but those machines were limited by their price and portability.
The MPC was a different beast because it really puts you in the driver's seat in terms of sonic texture that you wanted to have.
That's Brian Radar Ellis, and that's his MPC Renaissance.
You know, really just make a mess of it. It's a fully customizable machine, whereas you look at maybe like the Lynn drum or the Roland TR-808, which were specifically drum machines, the sounds came preloaded and you couldn't change them.
In short, the MPC60 was the musical brain of the studio. By 1994, when Akai introduced the MPC3000, it was the tool of choice for many of the top hip-hop producers in the game, including J Dilla.
I think the thing with Dilla that inspired so many producers is that he was able to use such a wide vocabulary of technique.
J Dilla was a producer out of Detroit in the mid-90s through his early death in 2006 from a rare blood disease. He passed away just 3 days after releasing one of his most fascinating and beloved albums, Donuts. He worked with an astounding list of iconic artists and pulled off the majority of his sound with just a few simple instruments, machines, and samplers, one of them being the MPC.
He knew how to get into every piece of the MPC and use it to a musical advantage.
So let's talk about J Dilla's drum style first.
He figured out how to humanize the drum machine by avoiding certain things that he could have done to make it more robotic, make it more stiff.
For instance, the MPC has this incredibly useful tool called quantization.
What quantizing does is it takes your performance. Let's say I'm playing my drum pattern. And when I'm playing it, sometimes it's a little ahead, it's a little bit behind.
If your kick drums are off by a little bit, quantization snaps them in place.
And so a lot of producers, they use quantize, not as a crutch, but they just weren't thinking about not using it. And so Dilla was like, yeah, I'm just gonna turn this off.
The result is a discography full of incredibly off-kilter drums. This loose drumming style was incredibly influential. When Red Bull Music Academy interviewed Questlove, he said J Dilla's drumming technique single-handedly changed how he played.
Whereas this part is normal, it sounded like the kick drum was played by like a drunk 3-year-old. I was like, are you allowed to do that? So it's like, that to me was the most liberating moment.
Dilla was known for his signature low-end texture, and his drums accounted for a lot of that sound. Here's just a regular sampled kick. Here's what that same kick with the high-end cutout sounds like. You'll hear that kick in a lot of Dilla beats, like on The Far Side's Runnin'. The other half of Dilla's low end came from his bass lines.
He had a way of kind of getting the fuzz and the bump out of a bass line.
The MPC gave Dilla the flexibility to create and manipulate his bass in a lot of different ways.
J Dilla didn't just, drop out of nowhere and just know how to do everything all at once. He was listening to a lot of the legends. In fact, producers like Large Professor, they use this technique a lot to get extra mileage out of a sample. So right now I got this loop. This is Gap Mangione. Diana and the Autumn Wind. In order to get a verse section, what producers would do is they would filter out the high end and they just leave this bass space in here for the rapper to rap. And then when the chorus came back around, they bring all the frequencies back. So you have a verse section and a chorus section, 2-for-1 sale.
Bitch that you would know, I'm out of this, cause you wanna be below. Y'all niggas in love with the S.
Oh.
Y'all niggas in love with the S.
One of my favorite Dilla basslines, though, actually came from his Moog synthesizer, which was custom made by Robert Moog himself. Just focus on how much his bassline rattles the low end of the song and meanders in and around the beat.
He was very meticulous about, what was going to kind of ooze and lay back a little bit. You listen to his Moog bass, it couldn't care less if it got there on time, but somehow it does.
He internalized every possible technique used in hip-hop and expanded upon it, and he did so with just an intense love and curiosity of sounds, and a lot of patience. If we look back at E=MC², we've got an incredible sub-bassy low end, and a sample from an incredibly off-the-wall song by Giorgio Moroder.
Energy equals MC².
Something that makes this record stand out is the how he extended it. Because if you just listen to it, it kind of only goes for a few beats, and he was able to extend it as far as he wanted.
Energy equals.
There are so many songs that show J Dilla's ability to flip a sample, but there's one that gives me goosebumps every time I hear it.
I can't stand to see you cry, no, baby, now.
A lot of people think sampling is easy because they're like, oh, they're just listening to the melody on top, but they're not thinking about what the instruments below that lead melody are doing and how they're playing a role in the beat.
The first 40 seconds of Don't Cry is just a few long loops of the Escort's I Can't Stand to See You Cry. He barely did anything with them. He's basically saying, this is all I have to work with. At 40 seconds, though, he says, now look what I can do with this MPC. Instead of chopping to the melody, he chopped up a handful of kicks and snares throughout the entire song, regardless of the melody on top of it. And like little puzzle pieces, he resequenced those kicks and snares to create this entirely new, dream-like song.
I think Dilla was just like super funky. A lot of that had to do with, him being willing to not care if the record speeds up or slows down as long as it feels good, and just throwing that care out the window and just being like, forget quantize, man. It does what I say it does. And then, just rocking like that.
Akai has released a steady stream of MPCs since the MPC60 and 3000. They've gotten glossier, more high-tech, more portable, and more integrated into digital audio workstations than ever before. But those 16 pads and scroll knob have persisted, and that tactile design has even influenced the design of countless other pieces of audio software. In the instruction manual for the MPC3000, Roger Lynn gives an introduction. And in that introduction, he asks the people that use the MPC to treat it like an instrument. It's like the modern-day piano or violin. And even though a lot of people say J Dilla never read the manual for the MPC3000, he still internalized that same idea. He used his MPC like Jimi Hendrix played his guitar or John Coltrane played the saxophone. It was an extension of himself. That's probably why, out of all the MPCs used by countless hip-hop producers and beatmakers over the years, J Dilla's is in a museum. Hey all, thanks so much for watching the video. I want to give a special thanks to Brian Radar Ellis. In addition to being a professor at Berkeley, he is also an MC and producer, and I've linked his work below in the description. You'll also find all of my sources and a lot of amazing links to further reading about J Dilla if you want to learn more about him. I didn't make a Spotify playlist, and that's because one of the greatest ones about J Dilla already exists. I've linked to that one in the description below. It's like 16 hours long. It's amazing.